guys, I'm back, and today I'm going to be giving a little bit of a history lesson, take a look back at my musical journey. Rather than do like a black metal essentials or death metal essentials, thrash metal essentials, like I see a lot of guys do, I figured I'd just throw everything into the pot and kind of just give a little history and look at all the albums that have shaped my tastes over the years. There's a ton of albums I could have included in this, but I handpicked all these specifically because they would have had something to do with whatever was going on at the time and how much I just thought these albums were just absolutely amazing. Right now we're listening to Imperium Decadence. There's our new one, We Are the Forgotten. This is a great atmospheric black metal band from Germany, I think. Just good, powerful, well-produced black metal, very melodic, very atmospheric. The last one was really good, so I picked this one up recently. Very, very good stuff. So, when I was young, let's just say maybe 13 years old or whatever, at the time, I mean, this would have been early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. You know, we didn't have internet or anything like that. And the only way I really found out about music was from MTV. Just watching, staying at my grandpa's house in the summertime while my parents were working, watch MTV all day and wait for something cool to come on. And through those early years, I was in the band in high school, marching band, symphonic band, all that stuff. And I think that had a big part to do with what I got into later on. As I've said before, I mostly gravitate towards more melodic asters and in metal, or just any music in general. But in those early days, man, it was just MTV, and I didn't really know about any metal music yet. I mean, this was just like I said, late 80s, early 90s, and I started off with bands like these, White Lion and Guns N' Roses. So White Lion, I remember they played, videos from that band, and they played a lot of that glam rock stuff, and I thought it was killer because I had never really heard anything else besides that. Of course, Guns N' Roses came along. Appetite for Destruction, I'm sure anybody that was around at the time was like the biggest album. Still holds up today too. I don't know about this one so much, but just seeing this stuff on MTV, and eventually got a cassette deck and started buying tapes. As I'd watch MTV, eventually at some point I saw the video for Metallica 1, and it knocked me off my socks. I just couldn't believe how awesome that music was. This is definitely not my favorite Metallica album, but it is the first Metallica that I ever heard, and the first band that I hearing this, and I look back at all my glam metal tapes and realize that all that stuff was crap, and this was the real deal. I'm sure everybody remembers the one video. There was just something about it. I loved how heavy the guitar was, the drumming. There was a real dark tone to it. Melodic. I mean, this was the band, man. I think my favorite is probably Master of Puppets, but this one, fantastic too. Blackened, Justice for All, Harvester of Sorrow, Dyer's Eve, man. This was full of good stuff. So this really kind of opened my eyes to what was out there. But I couldn't really. It was hard to get into anything because I didn't even know about Z-Rock at the time. When I found out about Z-Rock, it was about to shut down, unfortunately. But this was the first concert I ever saw. My mom took me to go see Metallica, Guns N' Roses, and Faith No More at the Superdome in New Orleans, which was an awesome concert, and Metallica was hard to follow. I didn't even give a shit about Guns N' Roses after we watched them, and they were good. They were good, but Metallica just blew the roof off the place. Faith No More was amazing. It was such a cool experience. That was the first time I ever smelled weed. It was weird being there with my mom, but she was cool enough to take me because she didn't want me to go alone. I'd have been in 8th grade at the time. So Metallica, yeah. And then my cousin made me a mixtape of stuff off Z-Rock that had a bunch of, bands like Scorpions, Iron Maiden, Metallica, and then there was Megadeth, Holy Wars. And when I heard that song, it blew my head off. I was obsessed with this band at that point. Anything that I could find by Megadeth, I was picking up. I still think today this album holds up. It is perfect in every way. One of the greatest, I'd say it's the greatest thrash metal record ever made. Every single song on here is gold. I remember I had a little TV in my bedroom, and there was this cable access station that used to just play music videos, and you could call in and request stuff, and I would almost every day request Hangar 18 video. Just obsessed with the band. Take No Prisoners, Five Magics, Tornado Souls, Rest in Peace Polaris. God, man, this thing is just full of amazing stuff. Dave Mustaine's one of the great riff writers ever. But yeah, this one still holds up, man. So at that point, I think I started to watch Headbangers Ball on Saturday nights. I'd tape it every night because it didn't come on until 10 o'clock and it went on for a couple hours, so I'd tape it on VHS and watch it the next day. And I'm sure, like most people, that's where I learned about a slew of new bands. First time I ever heard Iron Maiden was the video for Can I Play With Madness? I remember seeing people wearing like Iron Maiden shirts and stuff like that, and I remember thinking, I didn't even realize it was a band. I thought it was like a comic book or something like that. But saw the video for Can I Play With Madness, blew my head off. This still today is my favorite Maiden record. This is also the first CD that I ever bought. Well, my parents actually bought this for me for Christmas along with a CD player. They bought me this, Slayer, Seasons in the Abyss, and something else. Kudos to my parents who were actually cool about it. You know, they thought it was a little strange, but they didn't deter me away from it. Yeah, this one's still to this day, man. This is just such an amazing record. This one and Somewhere in Time, still two of my favorites. So, yeah, Headbangers Ball, I'd watch it every weekend and learn about more and more. And, you know, I thought like maybe Slayer might have been the heaviest thing I had heard. You know, played War Ensemble, video for that. Then saw the video for Dead Embryonic Cells, Sepultura. That definitely turned out to be the heaviest thing that I had heard yet, and that song blew me away. I remember watching that video and wanting to learn how to play drums. You know, in high school I played clarinet and saxophone, and I wanted to actually move to the drum line. My band director was an asshole, and he wouldn't let it happen. He made me stay where I was, but I ended up buying a little piece of shit drum kit, and I started to learn. This was the album that really influenced me in that case. I mean, you know, these early Sepultura records, I didn't really like anything past Chaos AD. You know, Roots just, I don't know, didn't do it for me. But this is another one of those, like, Rest in Peace, just perfect in every way. Every single song on here, it's just absolutely amazing. You know, the fact that these guys were from Brazil, starting to learn about bands from other countries was really cool. Seeing these guys, seeing their videos. They used to have the Triple Thrash Attack, I think it was called. Triple Thrash Threat or something like that on Headbangers Ball, where they played 3 videos, mostly like heavier stuff. Because they played a lot of crap too. They always play this. So, 9th grade, around this time, I had a buddy in high school that was singing in a death metal band. And I had not heard any death metal yet, and he let me borrow 3 tapes, introduced me into that world. Death Human, Deicide, and Carcass Necroticism. He lent me these actual 3 tapes. These aren't the actual ones. I went and bought my own afterwards, but I remember I had a Sony Walkman, listened to on the bus every day at home, and I remember hearing this Carcass, and just I couldn't even believe what I was hearing. It was the most bizarre thing. death metal, but highly melodic. And just looking at all the artwork, so crazy. This is when I had to start hiding my cassette tapes, because I thought my parents would not approve. I love the lyrics are just so cool in this. I remember thinking, this is just way out there. I couldn't even understand half of the words. I like how they actually gave names to the guitar solos. You look at the lyrics, like one of them's Lead Phil's Dust in the Mausoleum by W.G. Steer. Pretty cool. This album just blew me away completely. Carcass. And same with this, man, Deaf Human. Remember listening to this, and at that point I was a death metal fan for life. I mean, this is still to this day, it was the first death that I ever heard, and remains my absolute favorite death record. Every single death record is gold. There's not a bad one among them, but this is definitely my favorite. There was something about the cynic guys and their influence. This highly melodic and technical. I remember hearing the drumming and just being like, that's the fastest double bass drumming I had ever heard. Just absolutely amazing. Deaf Human. This is all these tapes that go to, I think, Camelot at the mall and buy cassette tapes. My buddy had lent me these. I had to go pick them up immediately, have my own. And then there was this Deicide, which a buddy of mine actually had got this for me on CD for my birthday, and it would have been like 10th grade maybe or something like that. And he gives it to me right in front of my parents, like an idiot. Like, dude, what the hell are you doing? Because obviously they're not going to approve of this. I mean, Lunatic of God's Creation, Sacrificial Suicide, Carnage in the Temple of the Damned, Crucifixation, stuff like that. My parents looked at it, my mom looked at it. She looked at the artwork and she instantly took it away. Like, no way. Didn't understand that, look, I'm not getting into Satanism or anything like that, but the music was just so killer. This is still, the great Deicide record. I kind of lost touch with them after the first 3. But still to this day, this was just groundbreaking stuff. Amazing drumming, just the riffs. It's another one of those that just still holds up today, Deicide. So yeah, started to see, that was around the time Headbangers Ball started playing death metal videos. Like, they played Obituary, Napalm Death, got that Utopia Banished CD for that. All kinds of stuff, but so I started to, at the time, still there was no other way to learn about music other than word of mouth, which I didn't really have a whole lot of friends that were into metal. So you would just go to the store and just blind buy something and just see how it was. But I bought these 2 compilation CDs that were really a big influence. This was Relapse's comp, and this was Nuclear Blast comp, I believe. Death is Just the Beginning too. Man, I wish I had some of all these albums. I wish I had some of the old CDs like this one where it says Music to Mangle Your Mind there on the side. Pretty cool, but this one lasted, and this one had just so much good stuff on it. I remember just being so, like, just blown away by just the... you'd see pictures of the bands in here and the names of the bands. There's just something mysterious about it, you know what I mean? Because you didn't know who these people were. It's almost like the stuff was like otherworldly or something like that. But man, Pungent Stench, Monstrosity, Sinister, Incantation, Dismember, Gorefest. Oh, love that one. Deceased. Amorphous. First time I ever heard of Amorphous. There's so many good tracks on this one. I've actually got Death is Just the Beginning 3, 4, and 5 as well. But this was definitely the best one, and really was a good way to learn about all these new bands, as well as this Corporate Death comp from Relapse. This was even like almost a little harder for me to get into with all these grind bands and stuff, but this had Amorphous on there, Incantation, Disembowelment, Macabre, Repulsion, Suffocation, A lot of great stuff, man. Glad that I still have this. It's a really cool booklet in here that has just like bios of all the bands and, you know, all these weird pictures of the Relapse pressing plant. These guys are sitting there making their executive decisions. Something cool about that for all these weird, obscure death metal bands. So much good stuff in here, man. I just would just listen to something and just go buy the tape or the CD. Yeah, corporate death. So yeah, you know, and then I can't not include this one, Cynic Focus, because I remember this came out. I actually had the cassette tape, but later bought the CD. You know, a lot of people didn't like this when it first came out. I was so into that Death Human record, and remember reading in the liner notes that Sean and Paul were in a band called Cynic. This dropped well not long after that, and I picked it up just blind bought. And at first, I didn't like the vocals at all. The vocoder robotic vocals I didn't like, but listening to the music contained within is just blew my mind. Just how they were incorporating like jazz fusion into this style. You know, after some time, the vocals kind of clicked with me. It just took some time. I remember nobody really liked this, and I instantly loved it. You know, this is one of those albums that will be close to my heart for the rest of my life. It still holds up today. One of my favorite bands of all time, absolutely. Sean Reinert, probably my favorite drummer of all time. I remember just like trying to figure out how the hell he was doing whatever he was doing on the drums on this. You know, because at the time I was trying to learn how to play, and I would just sit in my room with drumsticks and just air drum. But it just felt like the guy had full arms or something like that. You know, maybe there were some overdubs or something like that. But when you listen to a song like Textures, that's the instrumental. God, trying to figure out what he's doing on the drums there, I still, to this day, you know, can't fully figure it out. I've seen them play and got to see him do it. And just such a unique drummer. All the hi-hat stuff he does, it just has such a unique style. Incredibly influential. Forever amazing. Cynic. So now we start to get like later in my high school years when metal, you know, kind of started to die out around 96. Right up, I graduated high school in 96, went on to college in Mississippi, and, you know, 97, 96, 97, man, I think, you know, around the time when Nirvana and all the grunge bands were coming out, metal just kind of died a nasty death for a while, and I even kind of just dropped out of it. I don't know why. Just at the time, it was just weird. I kind of went through a weird period of music where I was into some hip hop, and you know, I went through sort of a punk rock phase. And this band, NoFX, still to this day, this album is one of my favorites. This is such a perfect record from start to finish. I love how melodic it is, but it was fast and fun. And I went through a small punk phase. I even played in a punk band at the time. But I was into more of these, you know, sort of like Fat Records type bands. You know, I mean, I had Minor Threat and, you know, some Bad Religion stuff. But, you know, NoFX, Pennywise, you know. This was the album, man. This is so good. Punk and Drublic. You know, because there just wasn't really any metal coming out at the time, you know. Punk rock was a good way to start learning how to play. You know, it's playing drums. Punk rock's not that hard to play if you can play in 4/4. You know, so, you know, there was these bands that I was kind of checking out, and I was even getting into stuff like, I even liked the first Korn record and Deftones and stuff like that. You know, that first Deftones record I still love to this day. I remember like thinking like the cool Korn thing and Marilyn Manson, all that kind of stuff was coming out. It wasn't really metal, but it was sort of a mainstream kind of thing. That first Deftones record still to this day I love, but everything else that was coming out, there was the Korn stuff, and then Korn did like the second, third record. They did the Family Values tour, and it was like Korn, Limp Bizkit, Ice Cube, Rammstein, Orgy maybe was at that show. I remember being at that concert and watching Korn, and I remember thinking, you know what, this shit fucking sucks. I don't really like this stuff anymore. So that was really kind of a small, sort of awkward period for me in music. Oh, I should have included a Primus record in here, because Primus still to this day, Les Claypool, one of my favorites, and that was another big one in that small period where metal was kind of not around. Selling the Seas of Cheese, Pork Soda was just huge on those albums. It was stuff like Nine Inch Nails, and I will say, I saw Nine Inch Nails play at, I don't remember, Lakefront Arena in New Orleans for the Downward Spiral tour, and that was still to this day one of the most amazing concerts I've ever seen. Not a huge Nine Inch Nails fan anymore, but that Downward Spiral album, they were just so vicious at the time, and it was an amazing show. So kind of an awkward period there, and I started to discover other things like more older classic stuff. I was never really exposed to like Zeppelin and all those bands until I met my first girlfriend. She was big into The Doors and Pink Floyd, and I'd never really heard Pink Floyd. I knew people really big into them. I just never gave them a chance, and this was the one that broke for me. With my girlfriend at the time, Dark Side of the Moon. What do you say about Pink Floyd? I mean, so many amazing records. I would say this is probably my favorite between this and The Wall. But started to get big into stuff like this. Then I heard Tom Sawyer. One of my friends had it playing in his car, and I'd never even heard Rush before. And hearing Tom Sawyer blew me away. Absolutely blew me away. I remember me and my dad went to the record store because he had just went to, I don't know what it was. He went and saw Fish, and he was like really big on it. He thought they were amazing, so he wanted to pick up one of their CDs. But he bought this for me as well because I had heard, Tom Sawyer, of course, and just was blown away. And this is still, probably one of the great Rush albums. And for me, I am a huge Rush fan. I like just about everything that they've ever released. I've got just about every album. A couple of those 80s records in the middle wasn't too big into, but everything up to the end, man. This is one of the greatest bands of all time. I've seen them 6 times. I fucking love Rush. I love Geddy Lee. I love Neil Peart, Alex Lifeson. Just such an amazing band, inspiration. What an amazing story that these guys have had, the trajectory, and just that they've been around for so long and released so many records. What can you say, man? Absolutely timeless for me, and one of my favorite bands. Have remained so forever, and will forever be close to my heart. These guys, what an amazing career that they've had. So now we're getting into like late 90s, like early 2000, and that's when metal just came back with a freaking bang, man. And for me, what brought me back in ultimately was Meshuggah's Destroy, Erase, Improve. A buddy of mine had this, heard this. I think the first song I heard was Vanished. Actually, you know what? I heard this on the Death Is Just the Beginning, either 3 or 4 compilation that came out from Nuclear Blast. And I remember hearing Vanished and just being blown away by this band. So immediately I had to this is a newer copy, but the first copy that I had to I think I had to order it from Barnes & Noble and get it shipped in from Europe. This album brought me back in all the way. I mean, Future Breed Machine, Soulburn, Transfixion. inside what's within beneath, I think. Terminal illusions, suffer and truth, man, sublevels. God, this album still to this day is from top to bottom, absolutely perfect masterpiece. I was just floored and amazed at what this band was doing, bringing in the sort of polyrhythmic style. And, I wish that they would have kind of gone back and done a similar album to this, because this one was, what they became was so different than what this album was. This was so melodic and just had the fusion elements and just was absolutely amazing. Love the vocals. The one before this, the EP, None. And then Chaosphere dropped, and I went and bought Chaosphere the first day it came out. I still got the CD, and when I put it in and listened to it, I did not like it whatsoever. It was completely different. I wanted more of this, and they completely changed their style. But after letting that album sink in, Chaosphere, I think it's absolutely mind-blowing now. Just took some time to get into it. I still think that's, next to this, one of their best records ever, Chaosphere. And I would say that that's the album that's more indicative of what they sound like now. But I don't think they've topped Chaosphere since then with their newer stuff, even though I really do enjoy a lot of the more recent records that they've released. But this is, one of the great bands of all time. Thomas Hockey, one of my favorite drummers, just absolutely essential in any metal fan collection is Destroy, Erase, Improve, and Chaosphere. Chaosphere, man, that album just, one of my buddies put it best. It's like, he would always say that whenever I put on Chaosphere, I want to just get organized. I want to clean up my house and get everything in order. And it kind of does make you want to do that almost, because it's just so perfect. And just the level of playing that first song, Concatenation, God, I still can't to this day figure out what the hell he's doing on the drums, man. It's just so absolutely insane how good and just freakish that Thomas Hockey is as a drummer, man. Should have gone at length about this band. So, at the time, as I said, I started to play drums. I'd been playing drums for a few years, played in a punk rock band, and went on to play in a band that was called Minus Infinity down in New Orleans, which was kind of like a tech thrash sort of band. We were into that Meshuggah, we were getting into all the Swedish melodic death metal coming out, and that's kind of what we were sort of trying to emulate. But my guitar player at the time was looking at his CDs, and I came across this. He had just picked this up, never had heard of this band, Opeth, Morning Rise. Listened to it, he said, you should check this out. Listen to it. Absolutely blew my mind completely. The first song, Advent, when they break it down and get into the acoustic, and he starts clean singing, I was just transfixed. Just absolutely blown away by how good this was. And at the time, this had just come out. My Arms Rehearse was about to be released. It was about to drop. And I went and picked up My Arms Rehearse. I didn't even know that, I didn't know anything about the band. I know that, I went to, I think it was Sound Warehouse at the time, or Camelot, whatever it was, and they had My Arms Rehearse on CD, and picked that up and was doubly just blown away, because what was so great about this album, they peaked at with My Arms Rehearse. Absolutely, essentially amazing record. These early Opeth albums, this was my favorite band at the time. Picked up Still Life. All those, everything. To this day, I don't like what they've become, but you can't deny that everything for me, everything up through Watershed is a masterpiece. Every single record. But this, this was the first one I ever heard, and just so mind-blowing, Opeth, man. So at the time, I started to read Metal Maniacs, because Metal Maniacs, you could buy it at the gas station. And that became my source for all music. And there were some early, Opeth reviews in there and stuff like that. And that's where I really started to get to learn new stuff. But as I was saying, we were big into the whole Gothenburg scene that was coming out. The early In Flames, Dark Tranquility, all that kind of stuff. But this band, Soilwork, the Chain Heart Machine dropped, and absolutely blew my mind. This record still holds up to this day. I love Soilwork. I like most of the stuff that they've done over the years. I think they're fun, catchy. They're kind of hit or miss, but this was before they got that more sort of commercial sound and started to do like clean vocals and stuff like that. This, if you have not heard this, I mean, this is just such a fucking ass-kicking record. Just vicious, obviously out the gates and inspired, really fast thrash, melodic death. I wouldn't even say death metal, melodic thrash or something. The drumming, I wanted to emulate this guy on this record because it was just so killer. Really highly melodic, just razor sharp riffing, really fast. And then, after this, they kind of went more commercial sort of rap. But Shane Heart Machine, this was essential in those early days for me. And that was what my big thing was, all the, melodic death metal, maybe some thrash. Black metal was just, I was not into it early on. Some of that stuff, I'd started reading about it in Metal Maniacs. Got all Metal Maniacs issues boxed up back there, but this is where you learned about everything. Wow, this is 30 minutes so far. Sorry, guys, but I've got a little bit more to get through, so. And this is where I learned about everything, and I think I didn't really give a lot of stuff a chance. At this time we're starting to get internet, we're starting to get Napster and stuff like that. Start to download stuff and be able to get whatever, and a lot of stuff I just listened to a song and just wouldn't devote enough time to checking out all the bands that you would read about. It was all of a sudden you had so many bands to check out, just trying to find the time for that stuff. But I wanted to single out this issue here. This is where I learned about some of the most amazing bands, but I saw this review right here for Agaloc's Pale Folklore. I remember looking at that picture and just there was something about it just captured me, and I had to check this band out, of course, based off the review as well. And this review was written by none other than Mr. Marty Worm, who runs Blind Room. So Marty, if you're watching this, you've had a very long influence on my own musical history, and still to this day, my friend. Loved your reviews, and this review prompted me to pick up Agalock Pale Folklore. And this was probably the first album that I ever heard that, had sort of a black metal sound. I mean, of course, this isn't a black metal record, but it does have a lot of that black metal element. And honestly, this took me a while to get into. I liked it at first, but the vocals, was hard for me to get into. It took me a while for that to really, me to be able to sort of acquire that sort of raspy sort of vocal style. But everything about this, and I think that was because I just wasn't really into any black metal at the time. I heard stuff like Dark Throne and I just didn't like that sound. I didn't like that raw, vibe to it. It was just not for me, at the time at least. But, buying this, and seeing these pictures, and at the time I had not even moved to Colorado yet, still in New Orleans, and, seeing these pictures, there was something about it that was really my early draw to wilderness, and that vibe, that sort of feeling, those pictures just captured me, enthralled me, and I think this album is a perfect album. And I'm a huge Agalock fan. I love pretty much everything they've done. I think that they died of hard death, and they went downhill toward the end there. But those first three records are masterpieces, and Pale Folklore is still probably my favorite one. To this day, I still listen to this pretty often. I love sort of the interludes that, the guy that had been doing this sort of the ambient pieces was just, the first thing that really captured me, but the level of just the acoustic guitar playing on this, there's the tone that they got with the acoustic guitars is so rich and just so awesome. I just love that tone that they got, that really reverberating acoustic tone where when they strum the notes, it's like it sustains for like a really, sustains for where it blends into the melody that they're playing, and it just absolutely blew me away. But thank you, Marty, because you're the guy that made me figure out or learn about one of my favorite bands ever. And I think this is what opened my mind to more, I guess, black metal sounding stuff. So, which brought me to Emperor Anthems. And actually, this wasn't the first Emperor I heard. The first I heard was Non-Equilibrium, because they had just come out at the time when I heard them. And this band took me a little bit to get into as well. I mean, the production on this, it's kind of hard to tell what's going on at times if you don't have good sound. And, but this is an essential album, perfect from start to finish. In my opinion, probably the greatest black metal record ever recorded is Anthems. I wasn't as big into the Nightside Eclipse sort of sound. That was a little rawer than I would accept at the time. Now I love it, of course, but that took some time for me to get more into that type of sound. But this is the one that just drew me in. I was into all the more commercial black stuff, I guess, like Dimmu Borgir, and but I just didn't have that sort of ear for that really more raw kind of black metal sound until the atmospheric stuff started to come out. But Anthems, man, one of the greats. I can't do this list without talking a little bit about Devin Townsend, Strappy Young Lad, City. This was the first I ever heard of Devin Townsend, and this album actually blew me away. I'm sure most people, it's absolutely an insane fucking record. Still, this is hard to top when it comes to that just over the top. Hoagland on drums, everything about this brought me into Devin Townsend's world, and still to this day, I'm a huge Devin Townsend fan, and I've pretty much loved everything he's done. I love all his solo stuff, but this is the one that brought it in. And I also can't get away without talking about Porcupine Tree. Stephen Wilson, this was my introduction to him, thanks to being an Opeth fan and learning about Stephen Wilson when he produced Blackwater Park. Stephen Wilson is one of my favorite of all time, and this was the greatest Porcupine Tree album. I went and checked this out based off of, reading about them, from Opeth, and I think Stephen Wilson is a genius. I think everything, for the most part, he's done is essential, especially his solo career lately. He's just been killing it. Every album has been amazing. If you are a music fan at all, it doesn't matter if you're, unless you're an absolutely closed-minded metalhead, I think anybody that loves music could find something to love from Stephen Wilson. He's one of the masters, man. All right, lastly, I just wanted to single this one out lastly because I do like a lot of jazz, and Miles Davis's Kind of Blue, this is what got me in. This is a brilliant record. I still listen to it very often. It's really kind of exposed me to that whole world of some of the old world jazz, like Coltrane and Thelonious Monk and Brubeck and stuff like that. This album is just absolutely beautiful from top to bottom. So again, I could have talked about so many records on this. Wow, we're almost 40 minutes. Guys, I'm sorry this is so long, but, all these I felt I had to include in this. And that's really what has taken my trajectory since I was 15 years old, 41 now. And all this stuff is still stuff I listen to regularly and broadened my horizons as to all the other great stuff that, that I listen to and that has been coming out. So, anyway, guys, I'm sorry this went so long. Almost 40 minutes. Promise I won't ever do this again. It's too long, but yeah, I did actually post a new hiking metal video last week. So if you have not checked that out yet, please go check it out. Put a lot of time into editing that thing down and trying to get it pretty good, and I think it came out pretty good. So Hope you guys enjoy it. Hope you guys enjoy this. I will be back in a couple weeks. Weather's getting awesome, man. It's getting really nice and cool outside, so hopefully gonna get some more hiking trips in here. So anyway, guys, cheers. See you next time.